If the sun were to suddenly vanish, the effects on Earth would be felt immediately. The first thing we'd notice is complete darkness. The sky would lose its familiar blue color, turning pitch black as the sun's light stopped reaching our atmosphere. The moon, which only shines because it reflects sunlight, would also go completely dark. The only sources of natural light left would be the stars in the night sky, but even they wouldn't be enough to brighten our world. Within just a few minutes, temperatures would begin to drop. The sun's warmth is what keeps our planet at a livable temperature, and without it, Earth would start to cool rapidly. In the first 24 hours, temperatures would fall below freezing in most places, making it difficult for humans, animals, and plants to survive outdoors. But the biggest and most immediate change would be in gravity. The sun's immense gravitational pull keeps Earth and the rest of the solar system in orbit. If the sun were to suddenly disappear, Earth would no longer be held in place and would begin moving in a straight line through space. At first, we wouldn't notice this movement, as everything on Earth would still feel normal, but over time, our planet would drift farther and farther away from where it once was, no longer bound to the solar system we know. Another major consequence would be the sudden halt of photosynthesis. Plants rely on sunlight to create energy, and without it, they would be unable to grow or produce oxygen. This process stops almost immediately, meaning the air we breathe would slowly begin to change. While we wouldn't run out of oxygen right away, over time the balance of gases in the atmosphere would shift, making it harder for life to continue as it does now. As the hours passed, the oceans would begin to respond to the lack of sunlight. The surface water, which is warmed by the sun, would start to cool, and within a few days, ice would begin forming in many regions. Ocean currents, which rely on temperature differences between warm and cold water, would start to weaken, disrupting marine ecosystems and weather patterns across the globe. The sudden loss of the sun would also cause panic among humans. Cities would be plunged into darkness, and many of the technologies we rely on would begin to fail. Solar panels would become useless, and plants grown indoors under artificial light would struggle as energy production declined. Governments and scientists would scramble to find solutions, but the reality is that there would be no easy fix for the absence of the sun. In the first few days, people would try to continue their daily routines, but the drop in temperature, food supply issues, and overall fear of the unknown would quickly change how society functioned. Without sunlight, people would experience severe disruptions to their sleep cycles, leading to exhaustion and confusion. Crops would begin to wither, and farmers would be left with no way to grow new food. This would just be the beginning. The loss of the sun would continue to impact Earth in ways that are difficult to fully comprehend. Next, we'll explore how our planet would change in the weeks and months following the sun's disappearance, as the world transforms into an unrecognizable frozen wasteland. As the first few weeks passed, the full impact of the sun's disappearance would become undeniable. The world would be locked in darkness, with no sunrise to mark the passage of time. Without the sun's warmth, temperatures would continue to drop at an alarming rate. Most regions would be far below freezing, and many parts of the world would already be experiencing conditions colder than anything recorded in human history. The oceans, which had already started to cool in the first few days, would now be undergoing a dramatic transformation. The surface waters in most areas would freeze over, forming thick layers of ice. However, the deeper parts of the ocean would remain liquid for a while longer, thanks to the heat stored in Earth's core. This would create an eerie contrast: vast, frozen landscapes above the surface, while some marine life still struggled to survive in the remaining pockets of warmth below. But even these deep waters would not stay habitable for long, as the lack of sunlight meant that ocean currents had nearly stopped, cutting off the flow of nutrients that sea life depends on. On land, the situation would be just as bleak. Without sunlight, the last remaining plant life would have died off. Trees, grass, and crops would be lifeless and brittle, frozen in the bitter cold. The loss of vegetation would set off a devastating chain reaction in the food chain. Herbivores, already weakened by the harsh conditions, would begin to die off without food. As a result, carnivores that relied on them for sustenance would soon follow. Within weeks, the majority of animal species would be struggling to survive, and many would already be extinct. Humans, too, would be facing extreme challenges. Cities would be covered in ice and snow, and many structures would be collapsing under the weight of the frozen environment. Transportation would become nearly impossible, as fuel supplies froze and roads were buried under thick layers of ice. Electricity, already unreliable due to the loss of solar energy, would now be failing in most areas. Without power, people would be forced to find alternative ways to stay warm, relying on burning whatever fuel they could find. The lack of light would also begin affecting human psychology in profound ways. People depend on natural light to regulate their internal body clocks, and without it, sleep cycles would become completely disrupted. Depression, confusion, and panic would become widespread. In an effort to maintain some sense of normalcy, people might attempt to create artificial lighting systems, but these would be temporary solutions to a much larger problem. As governments and scientists scrambled to come up with survival plans, underground shelters would likely become a last resort. The heat from Earth's core would provide some warmth beneath the surface, and some groups might attempt to relocate to deep underground facilities. However, this would not be a long-term solution for the entire human population, and supplies would quickly run out. By the end of the first month, Earth would be nearly unrecognizable. The planet would be a frozen wasteland, with temperatures plunging to levels far too extreme for most life to endure. The last surviving humans and animals would be desperately clinging to the few remaining sources of heat, while the planet itself continued its silent drift through the darkness of space. As we continue, we'll explore what would happen in the months and years that followed. If life had any chance of survival, where would it be? And how long could Earth sustain itself without the sun? As the months stretched on, Earth would continue its descent into an icy oblivion. The planet, once teeming with life, would be almost entirely frozen over. The surface temperatures would have dropped to levels colder than anything ever recorded, making survival nearly impossible outside of artificially heated environments. Most of the remaining liquid, water, would exist only deep beneath the frozen crust of oceans and lakes, and any areas still retaining heat would be shrinking by the day. For the small number of humans still alive, survival would depend entirely on underground shelters or geothermal heat sources. The Earth's core, still burning at extreme temperatures, would provide some warmth, but it would not be enough to sustain large populations. Those who had the resources and foresight to create underground bunkers would be among the last remnants of human civilization, but even they would be struggling with dwindling food and energy supplies. Hydroponic farming, which relies on artificial light, might allow for some food production, but the challenge would be keeping power sources running long term. The disappearance of the sun would also have profound effects on Earth's atmosphere. Without sunlight heating the planet, the air would continue to grow colder and denser, causing atmospheric gases to condense and fall as frozen particles. Over time, the air would become thinner, making it harder to breathe. The oxygen levels would drop slowly but steadily, adding yet another challenge to survival. In the absence of the sun's gravitational pull, Earth would continue on its existing trajectory for some time, but its orbit would eventually become unstable. Our planet would likely drift through space, no longer held in balance by the sun's gravity. This could mean a slow, aimless journey through the dark void, or in a worst-case scenario, Earth could be pulled into the gravitational influence of another celestial body. If that happened, the planet could be drawn into a catastrophic collision or thrown into an unpredictable path through space. Meanwhile, the solar system itself would be completely transformed. The other planets, no longer orbiting the sun, would also drift off into space. The once bright and active solar system would become a collection of frozen, wandering worlds. The outer planets, like Jupiter and Saturn, which are already far from the sun, would experience little immediate change. But the inner planets, Mercury, Venus, and Mars, would become lifeless, frozen spheres just like Earth. Back on Earth, the deep ocean waters, which had been some of the last places to retain heat, would finally succumb to the cold. Any marine life that had survived this long would now be gone. The ocean floors, which had been heated by geothermal vents, might still have some small pockets of warmth, but without a steady supply of nutrients, even these ecosystems would eventually collapse. By this point, nearly all surface life would be extinct. The only possible survivors would be microorganisms and extremophiles, organisms that thrive in extreme environments. These tiny life forms, buried deep in the ice or near geothermal vents, might continue to exist for a while, but without any source of energy beyond what little heat remained from the Earth's core, even they would face extinction in the long run. As Earth continued its silent journey through the cosmos, the planet would resemble a frozen rock drifting through space, lifeless and dark. The landscapes that once held bustling cities, forests, and oceans would now be buried under thick layers of ice, frozen in time. Any evidence of human civilization would slowly be buried beneath the frozen surface, leaving behind nothing but a silent world, abandoned in the void. As we wrap up, we'll explore the ultimate fate of Earth, and whether there would be any chance, no matter how small, that life could ever return. With Earth now a frozen wasteland drifting through the dark void of space, the final stage of its existence would be set in motion. The planet, once vibrant and full of life, would have become an unrecognizable icy sphere. Without the sun's warmth, no seasons would change, no winds would blow, and no life would stir on the surface. Earth would be a silent world, lost in the endless expanse of the universe, and over time the last traces of the atmosphere would disappear. The cold would cause any remaining gases to freeze and fall to the surface, creating an even thicker layer of ice. Without an atmosphere, Earth's protection against cosmic radiation and space debris would be gone. Meteors and asteroids would strike the planet's surface more frequently, leaving deep impact craters that would never erode away. Any remaining structures from human civilization, skyscrapers, bridges, or monuments, would eventually collapse under the weight of ice or be shattered by the force of space collisions. Beneath the frozen surface, the Earth's core would continue to generate heat for thousands, possibly millions, of years. This internal warmth might allow some deep-sea hydrothermal vents to persist for a while, but without a sun to sustain the global ecosystem, even these last refugees of life would eventually die out. In time, Earth's core would cool, its magnetic field would weaken, and the planet would become completely geologically inactive. No more earthquakes, no more volcanic eruptions, just a frozen rock floating through space. The fate of Earth from this point forward would depend on chance. It could wander the cosmos indefinitely, a lost planet with no destination. If it drifted close to another star, there might be a slim possibility that it could be captured by that star's gravity and warmed once again. However, the odds of this happening are almost non-existent. More likely, Earth would continue its endless journey, moving farther into the darkness, with no hope of revival. As for the remnants of humanity, if any people had managed to survive deep underground, their chances of long-term survival would be grim. Food supplies would eventually run out, energy sources would fail, and oxygen would become scarce. Without a sustainable way to generate food and heat, even the most well-prepared underground colonies would face an inevitable end. The last humans would eventually fade away, leaving behind no one to remember the planet's once thriving history. In the grand scale of the universe, Earth's disappearance from the solar system would hardly make a difference. The other planets, also lost without the sun's gravity, would be scattered in different directions, drifting aimlessly through space. The once bright solar system, full of energy and motion, would become a collection of frozen, wandering worlds. This hypothetical scenario is a reminder of how crucial the sun is to our existence. It is not just a source of warmth and light, it is the foundation of everything we know. Without it, life on Earth would be impossible, and all traces of our civilization would eventually vanish. While this is only a what-if situation, it highlights just how fragile our existence truly is in the vastness of space. Thanks for joining me on this journey into the unknown. If you have any thoughts on this chilling scenario, let me know in the comments, and if you're interested in more mind-bending space phenomena, check out our next video, where we'll explore the mysteries of black holes and what happens if you fall into one. Imagine stepping outside your home and seeing a towering brachiosaurus grazing on treetops, or hearing the distant roar of a Tyrannosaurus Rex echoing through the landscape. If dinosaurs had never gone extinct, the world would be a completely different place, one where humans may not even exist. The asteroid impact that wiped out the dinosaurs around 66 million years ago changed the course of history, shaping the planet into the one we know today. But what if that impact never happened? What if the dinosaurs had survived and continued to evolve alongside other species? For starters, the planet itself would look very different. Without the mass extinction event, mammals might never have had the opportunity to take over as the dominant life forms. During the time of the dinosaurs, mammals were small, burrowing creatures, often forced to hide from much larger predators. But after the dinosaurs disappeared, mammals rapidly diversified and took advantage of the open ecological niches. Without that opportunity, primates, including our earliest ancestors, might never have evolved. That raises a big question. Would humans even exist in a world where dinosaurs still roamed? Even if some form of intelligent life had developed, the ecosystems we know today would have been shaped in a completely different way. Large herbivorous dinosaurs like Triceratops and Diplodocus would have continued to dominate forests and plains, preventing the spread of large mammals. Apex predators like Allosaurus and Giganotosaurus would have ruled the food chain, making survival incredibly difficult for any smaller species trying to climb the evolutionary ladder. Another key factor to consider is climate. The asteroid impact and its aftermath caused massive climate shifts, cooling the planet and making it inhospitable for dinosaurs. If they had survived, Earth's climate might have remained much warmer for longer periods, which would have dramatically changed the types of plants and animals that could thrive. We might have had a planet covered in dense tropical forests, where massive dinosaurs still roamed freely rather than the more temperate environments we see today. Dinosaurs were already highly adaptable creatures, and if they had continued to evolve, it's possible that some could have developed advanced behaviors, possibly even intelligence. Some scientists believe that smaller bird-like dinosaurs like Troodon were already showing signs of higher brain function before the mass extinction event. Given millions more years of evolution, could they have developed tool use, communication, or even civilization? It's impossible to know for sure, but it's fascinating to think about. One thing is certain, our world would be unrecognizable. The landscapes, the animals, and even the fundamental balance of life on Earth would have been shaped by creatures that once ruled the planet. In the next part, we'll explore what kind of impact dinosaurs would have had on modern ecosystems, and whether humans and dinosaurs could have ever coexisted. Let's imagine a world where dinosaurs never went extinct. Picture yourself walking through a park and spotting a herd of Stegosaurus grazing nearby. In this world, humans and dinosaurs might share the planet, but how would they coexist? The first thing that comes to mind is how dinosaurs would fit into our modern ecosystems. Would they adapt to the urban environments we've built, or would they stay in more natural habitats, perhaps even evolving to thrive in the forests and plains where they once lived? Dinosaurs were incredibly adaptable creatures, so it's likely that they would have evolved to occupy different niches within ecosystems. Herbivores, like the long-necked Brachiosaurus and the massive Iguanodon, would continue to shape plant life by feeding on trees and shrubs, maintaining the balance of vegetation in much the same way modern herbivores do. In fact, their size and feeding habits could have shaped forests, preventing certain types of plants from overtaking others. Larger herbivores might even have formed migratory patterns, similar to those of modern-day elephants or wildebeests, helping maintain the health of entire ecosystems. As for the carnivores, it's possible that apex predators like the mighty Tyrannosaurus Rex or the swift Velociraptor would continue to regulate the populations of other animals, just like modern predators do today. With their sharp teeth, claws, and hunting strategies, these dinosaurs would have continued to dominate their respective territories, controlling the balance between predator and prey. But how would this affect the development of other species, including mammals? If dinosaurs remained the dominant predators, mammals would have had to evolve in very specific ways to avoid extinction. Smaller mammals might have remained nocturnal, hiding away from the larger predators during the day. Larger mammals could have become more elusive or adapted to live in more remote environments where dinosaurs weren't as common. It's also possible that some mammals could have evolved to become prey for the dinosaurs, much like how we see herbivorous mammals being hunted by big cats today. But humans, with our large brains and problem-solving abilities, might have found ways to survive alongside these giant creatures. In this world, it's fascinating to think about how dinosaurs could have adapted to living in cities. Imagine large herbivores roaming city parks, or perhaps even smaller species that could live alongside us in urban areas. Could humans have found ways to domesticate certain dinosaurs? After all, we've successfully tamed and trained animals like horses, dogs, and even elephants. It's not too far-fetched to imagine a world where humans might have ridden on the backs of triceratops or used velociraptors for hunting. In a sense, we could have lived with dinosaurs much like we do with animals today. But coexistence wouldn't come without its challenges. It's likely that the larger, more dangerous carnivores would have posed a significant threat to human populations. Imagine a world where cities are built with massive reinforced walls to keep out dinosaurs, or where humans have to constantly be on the lookout for predators in the streets. Some cities might even have built giant enclosures to house the herbivores, much like modern zoos do today. But the question remains, would we have found a way to live in harmony with these creatures, or would conflict have been inevitable? One thing's for sure. If dinosaurs had never gone extinct, the balance of life on Earth would be completely different. Humans and dinosaurs would have had to find a way to share the planet, and it's impossible to know whether they would have coexisted peacefully or whether we would have fought for dominance. But as we dive deeper into the what if, we must consider how humans and dinosaurs could have evolved together, learning from each other and perhaps even influencing one another in unexpected ways. Now let's dive into the even more fascinating possibility. How might dinosaurs have evolved over time had they never gone extinct? If they had continued to live alongside mammals and humans, their evolution would have been influenced by the same factors that affect species today: competition for food, environmental changes, and survival of the fittest. Over millions of years, we could imagine that dinosaurs would have evolved to occupy entirely new ecological niches, and possibly even develop traits that would allow them to thrive in different environments. Take the herbivorous dinosaurs, for example. Species like the Triceratops and Stegosaurus were already well adapted to their environments, but with changing climates and shifting landscapes, they could have evolved into new forms. Perhaps their horns and armor could have become even more specialized to fend off predators or to compete for food. It's also possible that herbivores would have adapted to the changing plant life on Earth. If we consider how modern animals evolve in response to climate change or habitat loss, dinosaurs might have developed new strategies for survival. Maybe they would have been more social, forming herds that would work together to protect against the growing threat of predators. Or perhaps some species would have adapted to more specialized diets, consuming plants that only grow in specific regions. On the flip side, carnivores would have been even more intriguing. Imagine the evolution of apex predators like the Tyrannosaurus rex. Over time, they might have become even more refined in their hunting tactics, possibly developing better teamwork or hunting strategies, much like the wolves do today. Their size and strength would have continued to make them formidable, but as their environment and prey evolved, so would their hunting methods. It's also possible that some species of carnivores might have become more solitary or more social, depending on their environment and available resources. Carnivores might have also adapted to living in different regions, perhaps evolving to thrive in dense jungles, mountain ranges, or even more urban environments. But the most exciting part of this scenario lies in the potential for some dinosaurs to evolve higher levels of intelligence. While dinosaurs are typically thought of as instinct-driven beasts, some species may have developed increasingly sophisticated behaviors over time. We already know that some dinosaurs, like the Troodon, had relatively large brains for their size. What if they had evolved even further, developing advanced problem-solving skills, social structures, or even communication methods? It's possible that they could have developed their own forms of technology or culture. In a world where dinosaurs never went extinct, they might have eventually built their own civilizations or established advanced societies that rivaled early human cultures. The idea of dinosaurs with complex behaviors and intelligence leads us to another fascinating possibility. Could they have developed some form of communication? We already see that modern birds, the closest living relatives of dinosaurs, have intricate vocalizations and social structures. Could dinosaurs have developed a more sophisticated means of communication, like vocal calls or even gestures, to coordinate with one another or to warn of danger? Perhaps they would have developed rudimentary tools to help them in everyday life, like using rocks to crack open tough plant material or creating shelters to protect themselves from the elements. As we continue to imagine this world where dinosaurs are still alive, it's fascinating to consider how they might have adapted to the changing world around them. Would they have migrated to new continents as the Earth's climate changed over millions of years? Would they have crossed paths with humans in new and unexpected ways? Could we have formed a symbiotic relationship with them? Or would we have had to compete for resources as dominant species on the planet? In many ways, it's a world full of unknowns, but one thing is certain: the survival and evolution of dinosaurs would have created a very different Earth than the one we know today. In this final part, let's take a step back and reflect on the broader implications of dinosaurs still walking the Earth today. It's easy to imagine a world where these incredible creatures never went extinct. But the question is, how would they have shaped our history? If dinosaurs had continued to live alongside early humans, would our species have been able to rise to the level of dominance we enjoy today? It's possible that humans would have had to evolve in very different ways, with our early ancestors possibly evolving with the need to be more agile, more strategic, or more communal in order to survive in a world filled with these towering predators. One of the biggest questions in this what-if scenario is whether we, as humans, could have learned to coexist with dinosaurs. Could we have found ways to domesticate some species, like we did with horses or dogs, or would we have lived in constant fear of being hunted down by a Tyrannosaurus rex? or outmaneuvered by a pack of velociraptors. Perhaps some species of herbivorous dinosaurs could have been tamed and used for labor, like oxen or elephants today, while others would have remained wild and dangerous. In such a world, maybe our society would have developed entirely new technologies for defense or communication, possibly even creating early warning systems for dinosaur attacks or building stronger structures to protect ourselves from their power. If we look to the past for clues, we see that early humans were already learning to live alongside wild animals, even in the most dangerous of situations. But dinosaurs, with their size and strength, would have presented an entirely new challenge. Could we have developed early forms of domestication for them, like herding certain species to help with farming or transportation? Imagine having a herd of triceratops pulling plows, or a trained pack of raptors helping with hunting. While it's an exciting thought, it also raises the question of how the ecosystems would have balanced out, and whether the sheer number of large predators might have created a more dangerous environment for humans than we would have been prepared for. Another possibility is that dinosaurs might have developed a type of cultural society, similar to what we see in certain species today, like elephants or dolphins with their size, intelligence, and social structures. It's conceivable that some dinosaurs might have formed groups that could rival human communities in their complexity. These societies would likely have been built around resources like food, territory, and protection from larger predators. Could these societies have been as advanced as human civilizations? It's impossible to say for sure, but it's a fascinating thought to consider. As we reach the end of this journey into the world of what if, we can't help but realize that the continued existence of dinosaurs would have fundamentally changed the course of life on Earth. Their presence would have altered the course of evolution for many species, including our own. It would have created a planet filled with immense diversity, with the possibility of dinosaurs evolving in ways we could never have imagined. Some might have developed new technologies, new forms of communication, or even new ways of interacting with the Earth and its resources. And who knows, maybe humans and dinosaurs could have even learned to work together, creating a partnership that no one could have predicted. The world of dinosaurs never going extinct is a truly wild thought experiment, one that raises questions about survival, adaptation, and the paths evolution might have taken. In this alternate reality, dinosaurs might still roam the Earth today, influencing everything from the plants and animals we interact with to the very way we live our lives. It's a reminder of how unpredictable and amazing the forces of nature and evolution truly are. Thanks for taking this journey into the world of dinosaurs with me. It's been an exciting thought experiment, and I hope it's got you thinking about the possibilities of what might have been. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the what if of dinosaur survival, be sure to leave a comment below with your own thoughts. Would you want to live in a world with dinosaurs, or would you prefer a world without them? Let me know, and I'll see you in the next video. Imagine a world without bees. At first, it might sound like a minor inconvenience. A little less buzz in the garden, maybe a bit more work at the local farmer's market, but the reality is far more serious than that. Bees play a critical role in our ecosystem, and without them, our world would be drastically different. Bees are the unsung heroes of nature. These small insects are responsible for pollinating about 1/3 of the world's crops. Without them, we would be without many of the foods we take for granted. Apples, blueberries, almonds, avocados, and even coffee. In fact, about 75% of flowering plants rely on pollinators like bees to reproduce. This means that without bees, the world would face a massive food crisis. Crops would fail, and the global food supply would be severely diminished. The decline of bee populations isn't just a future concern, it's already happening. Since 2010, beekeepers in the United States have reported losing about 30% of their colonies every year. This loss is staggering and is a direct result of several factors, including habitat destruction, pesticide use, and climate change. But what if all the bees suddenly disappeared? First, the consequences would be felt immediately. The food industry relies heavily on bee-pollinated crops, so without bees, many of the foods we eat would become scarce. Prices would skyrocket as farmers struggled to find alternative ways to pollinate their crops. The lack of bees would also lead to a dramatic decrease in the availability of fruits and vegetables, which make up a significant portion of our diet. Imagine grocery stores with empty fruit aisles, and your favorite fruits becoming luxuries that only the wealthy could afford. The impact would extend far beyond just our food. Bees help pollinate wild plants, that provide essential food and shelter for wildlife. Many animals, including birds, small mammals, and insects, depend on these plants for survival. With fewer plants, there would be less food available for these animals, leading to a collapse in wildlife populations. Ecosystems would be disrupted and biodiversity would suffer. It would be a cascading effect, with one problem leading to another. The loss of bees could mean the loss of entire ecosystems, and the resilience of nature would be severely weakened. Even beyond their role in pollination, bees are vital for nutrient cycling. They help break down organic matter and contribute to soil health. This means that without them, plants would struggle to grow. The soil would lose its richness, and crops that rely on healthy soil would fail to thrive. In short, without bees, the very foundation of life on Earth would begin to crumble. In a world without bees, we would find ourselves in a food and environmental crisis like no other. While humanity might be able to scrape by for a while, the long-term consequences would be dire. The truth is, we're far more dependent on these tiny creatures than we may have realized. The loss of bees would be a wake-up call, forcing us to re-examine our relationship with nature and how we treat the environment. But that's just the beginning. In the next part, we'll explore the domino effect that could happen if bees went extinct and how it would ripple across our ecosystems, economy, and even our daily lives. If bees were to disappear from the planet, the consequences would spread far beyond the loss of just a few crops. The impact would be like a chain reaction, affecting the entire web of life in ways we might not immediately see. In a world without bees, not only would our food supply suffer, but entire ecosystems would begin to unravel, creating a ripple effect that could alter our environment and society in drastic ways. One of the first areas to feel the consequences would be the agricultural industry. Without bees to pollinate crops, farmers would be forced to look for alternatives. Some crops, like corn and wheat, don't rely on bees, but many of the foods we eat, fruits, vegetables, nuts, do. Without bees, farmers would have to rely on manual pollination, which would be incredibly labor-intensive and expensive. In fact, it could take hundreds of workers just to pollinate the amount of crops that bees manage to pollinate in a single day. This means that food prices would skyrocket. Without enough pollinators, the cost of produce would soar, and not just for things like berries and melons, but also for products like honey, which relies on bees for production. It would be a financial burden on consumers and farmers alike. The loss of bees could also cause a disruption in the availability of certain crops altogether. For example, almond trees depend heavily on bee pollination. Without bees, the entire almond industry could collapse, leading to a loss of an essential nut that is used in everything from snacks to almond milk. But the problem wouldn't stop there. As crops like fruits and vegetables become scarcer, so too would the animals that depend on them. Bees play an indirect role in feeding many species. For example, deer, rabbits, and birds rely on the plants that bees pollinate for food. As these plants begin to disappear, herbivores would have a harder time finding food, which would eventually affect carnivores who depend on them for survival. The collapse of one part of the food chain would send shockwaves throughout the entire system. With the loss of bees, the effects on ecosystems would be severe. Healthy ecosystems are built on the delicate balance of plants, animals, and their environment. Bees are a key part of that balance. They not only pollinate food crops, but also many wildflowers that are essential for maintaining biodiversity. Without bees to pollinate these plants, we could see a decline in the number of plant species, which in turn could lead to the loss of animal species that rely on those plants. Another major consequence would be the impact on soil health. Bees play a role in the nutrient cycle, helping to fertilize plants and promote healthy soil. Without bees, plants would struggle to grow and the soil would lose its richness. Crops would be less likely to thrive, and without healthy crops, the soil would deteriorate over time, leading to a decrease in agricultural productivity. The loss of bees would have far-reaching consequences that go beyond just the food we eat, affecting the very foundations of our ecosystems. In addition to the environmental and economic impacts, the loss of bees would have cultural and societal consequences. Bees have been important to humanity for thousands of years. They've been symbols of hard work, cooperation, and nature's delicate balance. Many cultures have depended on bees for honey, which is not only a food source, but also has medicinal uses. Without bees, the cultural and traditional practices surrounding beekeeping would vanish, and the loss of honey would be felt globally. The potential loss of bees is not just an environmental concern, it's a threat to our way of life. The disruption of ecosystems, the collapse of agricultural industries, and the rising cost of food would put pressure on societies everywhere. It's a sobering thought, but it's a reality we may soon have to face unless we act now. In the next part, we'll take a closer look at the possible solutions to this crisis and what we can do to help prevent the disappearance of bees. While the challenges are significant, there is still hope, and by making a few changes in our approach to the environment, we might be able to save these vital creatures before it's too late. The good news is that while the disappearance of bees would have devastating effects, there are many ways we can help prevent this from happening. One of the most important actions we can take is to address the factors that are directly contributing to the decline in bee populations. By tackling issues like habitat loss, pesticide use, and climate change, we can create a safer environment for bees to thrive. Habitat loss is one of the leading causes of bee decline. As cities and agricultural land expand, natural habitats like meadows, forests, and wildflower fields are being destroyed or altered. Bees need these habitats to find food, water, and shelter, and without them, their chances of survival are slim. To help, we can work to protect and restore these habitats. Planting wildflowers, native plants, and creating bee-friendly gardens are all great ways to support bee populations. These efforts can be made on a large scale, like through community or government-led restoration projects, or on a smaller scale, such as in private gardens. Even planting a few bee-friendly plants in your own backyard can make a difference. Another way to help is by reducing the use of harmful pesticides. Pesticides are toxic to bees, either directly by poisoning them or indirectly by contaminating their food sources. Many of the chemicals used on crops can have long-lasting effects, not only killing bees, but also affecting their ability to navigate, communicate, and reproduce. To minimize the impact of pesticides, farmers and gardeners can adopt more eco-friendly methods, such as using organic pesticides or encouraging natural predators like ladybugs and birds to control pests. Reducing pesticide use is crucial, and with the development of more sustainable farming practices, it's possible to reduce the harm to bees while still managing pests effectively. Climate change is also playing a major role in the decline of bees. As temperatures rise and weather patterns become more erratic, bees are struggling to adapt. Some plants are blooming earlier or later than usual, making it harder for bees to find food when they need it. Extreme weather events such as floods or droughts can also disrupt bee populations. In order to address the effects of climate change, we need to take action on a global scale. Reducing carbon emissions, protecting natural ecosystems, and promoting renewable energy sources are all vital steps in slowing down the effects of climate change and giving bees a fighting chance. One of the most effective ways to support bee populations, however, is through education and advocacy. Many people simply don't realize how crucial bees are to our everyday lives. By raising awareness about the importance of bees and the challenges they face, we can encourage more people to take action. Governments, organizations, and individuals all have a role to play in protecting bees. Some countries have already passed laws to protect pollinators, and more should follow suit. By supporting policies that protect bees, such as banning harmful pesticides or incentivizing the planting of bee-friendly plants, we can help create a world where bees are safe and thriving. On a smaller scale, there are everyday actions we can take to help bees. For example, reducing our use of plastic can help protect the natural habitats that bees rely on. By supporting sustainable and eco-friendly products, we can reduce our impact on the environment and create a healthier planet for bees to live in. Every small step counts, and when enough people come together to make changes, the impact can be significant. In addition to these efforts, beekeeping has also seen a resurgence in recent years, and many people are getting involved in keeping their own hives. Beekeeping can be a great way to directly support bee populations while also harvesting honey and beeswax. It's a way to connect with nature, learn about the important work bees do, and contribute to the survival of these vital creatures. Beekeepers help maintain healthy bee colonies, which in turn support the pollination of crops and wildflowers. It's a small but meaningful way to make a difference. All of these efforts combined can help create a safer environment for bees and prevent the collapse of ecosystems that rely on them. While it may seem like an overwhelming problem, the truth is that we can all make a difference. By being conscious of the actions we take, advocating for change, and supporting bee-friendly practices, we can help ensure that bees continue to thrive for generations to come. In the final part, we'll explore the importance of global cooperation in tackling the challenges bees face and how we can all work together to secure a future where bees are no longer at risk. The future of our planet and our food supply depends on it. The future of bees, and by extension, the future of our planet, is in our hands. While it may seem like the challenges they face are insurmountable, there is still hope. The decline of bee populations is a global issue, but it is one that can be addressed with collective effort. It's not just about protecting bees, it's about protecting the entire web of life that depends on them. One of the most crucial steps in ensuring the survival of bees is fostering international collaboration. Bee populations don't recognize borders, and the effects of their decline are felt worldwide. For this reason, countries need to come together to share knowledge, resources, and strategies for saving bees. The European Union, for example, has already implemented policies to protect pollinators, such as banning certain pesticides and encouraging sustainable farming practices. Other countries can follow suit by enacting similar measures and ensuring that bee protection is a priority. Governments have a key role to play in shaping the future of bee conservation. But it's not just about laws and regulations, it's also about funding research and supporting innovative solutions. For example, scientists are currently studying the genetics of bees to better understand how they adapt to environmental stressors. With this knowledge, we can develop more resilient bee populations and ensure that they can survive in the face of climate change and other threats. Investing in research is crucial for developing new ways to protect bees and understanding how we can create a healthier environment for them. In addition to government action, businesses and industries must also take responsibility. Agriculture, in particular, is a major contributor to bee decline, and it's essential for the industry to adopt more sustainable practices. By promoting organic farming, reducing pesticide use, and supporting pollinator-friendly initiatives, companies can help protect bees while still meeting the demand for food. This shift towards sustainability is not only good for bees, it's good for the economy and for the planet. Consumers also have the power to influence change by choosing products that support sustainable practices and by advocating for better policies. The role of individual action cannot be underestimated. Each of us can contribute to the well-being of bees by making small, everyday changes, whether it's planting a bee-friendly garden, reducing our carbon footprint, or supporting eco-friendly businesses. Every little action helps. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by the magnitude of the problem, but the truth is that collective action can make a significant difference. When enough people come together with a shared vision for a bee-friendly world, change becomes possible. Education and awareness play a huge part in bee conservation. Many people don't fully understand the importance of bees or how their decline could affect us all. Through education, we can inspire people to take action and support initiatives that protect bees. Schools, community groups, and environmental organizations all have a role to play in spreading the message about the importance of pollinators. The more people know about the vital role bees play in our ecosystems, the more likely they are to act in their defense. There are also exciting opportunities on the horizon, like the development of new technologies to protect bees. For instance, researchers are working on creating bee-friendly pesticides that are less harmful to pollinators. There are even efforts to create artificial pollinators, like drones, that could step in when bee populations are struggling. While these solutions are still in the early stages, they represent the kind of innovation we'll need to keep bees safe in the future. In the end, the survival of bees depends on all of us. Governments, businesses, scientists, and individuals all have a part to play in securing a future where bees continue to thrive. It may seem like an impossible task, but when we work together, we can protect these incredible creatures and ensure that our planet remains healthy and resilient. The question of whether humanity could survive without bees is a dire one, but it's a question we don't have to answer. With concerted effort and determination, we can protect the bees that are so vital to our survival. If we act now, we can ensure that future generations will continue to enjoy the many benefits that bees bring to our world. Thanks for sticking with me through this journey. Let's make sure we're doing everything we can to protect our planet's unsung heroes, the bees. If we want to ensure a future where bees continue to thrive, we need long-term solutions that go beyond immediate conservation efforts. While planting flowers, reducing pesticide use, and supporting sustainable agriculture are important, the fight to save bees must also focus on building a world where their survival is no longer in question. One of the biggest factors in long-term bee survival is restoring and protecting natural habitats. Over the past century, massive amounts of land have been cleared for urban development, large-scale farming and industrial expansion. This destruction has left bees with fewer places to find food, shelter, and nesting sites. To reverse this, governments and environmental groups are working to restore meadows, grasslands, and forests that serve as natural homes for pollinators. Programs that turn abandoned lots into pollinator-friendly green spaces, create protected wildflower corridors, and plant native vegetation along highways and city parks all contribute to creating a more sustainable world for bees. Beyond land restoration, changing the way we farm is essential. Modern industrial agriculture is designed for efficiency and large yields, but it often comes at the expense of biodiversity. Many farms today grow massive fields of a single crop, known as monocultures, which provide little to no food for bees outside of short blooming periods. Shifting to diverse crop rotations, intercropping, growing multiple plant species together, and integrating wildflowers into farmlands can create environments where bees have access to food year-round. Some farmers have already adopted bee-friendly practices, but widespread adoption will require incentives, education, and policy changes. The role of technology in bee conservation is another fascinating aspect of this issue. Scientists are exploring ways to support bee populations through artificial intelligence and robotics. Some researchers are developing robotic pollinators, tiny flying drones designed to mimic the behavior of bees by transferring pollen between plants. While this might sound like something out of science fiction, these innovations could play a role in pollination if bee populations continue to decline. However, replacing bees entirely with technology is not a realistic or desirable solution. Instead, these developments should be seen as temporary backups rather than replacements for natural pollinators. Another promising advancement is bee breeding programs aimed at increasing resilience in honeybee populations. By selectively breeding bees that are more resistant to disease, better adapted to climate change, or able to withstand environmental stressors, researchers hope to create stronger colonies that can survive in an increasingly unpredictable world. Beekeepers are also experimenting with hive designs that better protect bees from temperature fluctuations, pests, and chemical exposure. Public involvement will continue to be a major factor in the success of bee conservation efforts. Over the past few decades, awareness of the importance of bees has grown significantly. More people are learning about their role in ecosystems, advocating for policy changes, and supporting conservation initiatives. Grassroots efforts like community gardens that prioritize pollinator-friendly plants or citizen science projects where people help track bee populations are becoming more common. Schools are even incorporating bee education into their curriculums, ensuring that future generations understand the value of these tiny but mighty creatures. Ultimately, the question of whether humanity could survive without bees is not just about food or agriculture, it's about the health of the entire planet. Bees are a vital link in the chain of life, supporting ecosystems that sustain countless species, including humans. While there are ways to mitigate their loss, none of them come close to providing the same natural, efficient, and interconnected benefits that bees offer. The good news is that the situation is not hopeless. Unlike some environmental crises that feel too big to tackle, bee conservation is an issue where real change is possible. With the right mix of science, policy, and public action, we can ensure that bees continue to thrive for generations to come. Thanks for watching and being part of this important conversation. If you want to learn more about the natural world and how we can protect it, be sure to check out my next video. Let's keep working toward a future where bees and all of nature can flourish.